Working late on the 42nd floor, Chen found the city's most powerful CEO unconscious on his office couch, a man everyone feared but no one truly knew. What started as an ordinary cleaning shift would become the story that changed two lives forever. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The Meridian Tower pierced the Seattle skyline like a glass needle, its 45 floors housing the headquarters of Sterling Dynamics, one of the fastest-growing tech companies on the West Coast. At 11:30 on a Tuesday night, the building was supposed to be empty except for security guards and the overnight cleaning crew. Chen pushed her cart down the marble corridor of the executive floor, her soft-soled shoes silent against the polished stone. At 28, she had been cleaning offices for 3 years while putting herself through business school. Unlike her coworkers who rushed through their shifts, Maya took pride in her work, treating each space with the same care she hoped to bring to her future career. The executive floor was her favorite assignment, not because of the prestige but because of the quiet. No ringing phones, no urgent meetings, no stressed employees rushing past with coffee-stained shirts and worried expressions. Just her, the city lights beyond floor-to-ceiling windows, and the satisfaction of restoring order to spaces where million-dollar decisions were made daily. She had been cleaning Sterling Dynamics for 8 months now, long enough to know the routines of the executives who worked late. The chief financial officer always left his desk covered in spreadsheets and energy drink cans. The head of marketing collected coffee cups like trophies, leaving them in every corner of her office. And the CEO, Alexander Sterling, was different. Maya had only glimpsed him a few times during her evening shifts. Tall, probably in his mid-30s, with dark hair that looked like he ran his fingers through it when he was thinking. He never acknowledged the cleaning staff, but he wasn't rude about it. He simply existed in a different universe, one where quarterly reports and board meetings and company valuations mattered more than the people who emptied his trash cans. What struck Maya most about Sterling was how alone he seemed. Other executives gathered in groups, talking and laughing as they waited for elevators. Sterling walked the halls by himself, his expensive suit perfectly tailored, his expression distant. Even his office reflected his isolation. While other executives decorated their spaces with family photos and personal touches, Sterling's corner office was sterile. No pictures, no awards displayed, just a massive desk, a leather chair, and a view of the city that stretched to the mountains. Tonight felt different as Maya approached Sterling's office. Usually, he left by 10, his lights switched off, his door locked, but warm light spilled from under his door into the darkened hallway. Maya hesitated, her hand on the cleaning cart. She could come back later, but her supervisor had been clear about finishing the executive floor before midnight. She knocked softly on the doorframe, though the door was already open. When no response came, she called out quietly, "Hello? Cleaning service." Silence. Maya stepped inside, expecting to find Sterling at his desk buried in paperwork. Instead, she found something that made her heart skip. The CEO of Sterling Dynamics was slumped on the leather couch against the far wall, completely unconscious. His usually perfect suit was wrinkled, his tie loosened, and his face looked exhausted even in sleep. For a moment, Maya stood frozen. This was Alexander Sterling, the man whose name was on the building, whose face graced the covers of business magazines, whose net worth was estimated in the hundreds of millions. And he looked utterly human. Maya's first instinct was to back away quietly, to let him sleep and return later. But something stopped her. His breathing was shallow, and his skin had a grayish pallor that worried her. Empty prescription bottles sat on the coffee table next to his laptop, along with takeout containers that looked days old. Her nursing training from community college kicked in. Maya had switched to business school, but she still remembered the basics of health assessment. She approached carefully, not wanting to startle him, and checked his pulse. It was weak, but steady. His breathing was regular, though labored. "Mr. Sterling?" she said softly, gently shaking his shoulder. He didn't respond. Maya noticed the prescription bottles more closely. Sleep aids, anxiety medication, blood pressure pills, all recent, all prescribed to Alexander Sterling. The man who projected invincibility to the business world was fighting battles no one could see. She should call 911, she thought. But something about the scene stopped her. This wasn't a medical emergency. This was exhaustion, stress, and loneliness taking their toll on someone who had forgotten how to take care of himself. Maya made a decision that would change both their lives. Instead of calling for help, she quietly began to clean around him. She emptied the overflowing trash can filled with energy drink cans and crumpled papers. She organized the scattered reports on his desk. She wiped down surfaces and straightened chairs, moving with the practiced quiet of someone accustomed to working around sleeping patients. As she worked, Maya found herself studying Sterling's face. Without the sharp focus of his waking hours, he looked younger, more vulnerable. Stress lines creased his forehead, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. This was a man running on empty, pushing himself beyond human limits. An hour passed. Maya had finished cleaning the rest of the office, but Sterling hadn't moved. She found herself genuinely worried. How long had he been sleeping here? When was the last time he had eaten a real meal or gone home to his own bed? Maya looked at the takeout containers on the coffee table. 3 different restaurants, all several days old. She opened his small office refrigerator and found it stocked only with energy drinks and leftover Chinese food that had gone bad. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Making another decision that surprised herself, Maya left Sterling's office and took the elevator down to the building's cafeteria. Using her own money, she bought soup from the vending machine and hot tea from the coffee station. She returned to find Sterling still unconscious, but his breathing seemed steadier. She set the soup and tea on his desk, where he would see them when he woke up, then settled into the chair across from the couch to wait. Maya told herself she was being professional, making sure he was okay before finishing her shift. But truthfully, something about his vulnerability touched her. At 2 in the morning, Sterling finally stirred. Maya watched as consciousness slowly returned to his face. First confusion, then awareness of his surroundings, then the sharp embarrassment of realizing he wasn't alone. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice hoarse from sleep. He sat up quickly, running his hands through his disheveled hair, trying to restore some semblance of the composed executive everyone knew. "I'm sorry, Mr. Sterling," Maya said gently. "I'm with the cleaning service. I found you sleeping and wanted to make sure you were okay." Sterling looked around his office as if seeing it for the first time. The clean surfaces, the organized papers, the soup and tea waiting on his desk. His expression shifted from embarrassment to something Maya couldn't quite identify. Surprise, maybe, or gratitude. "You cleaned around me?" he asked. "I didn't want to wake you. You seemed like you needed the rest." Sterling stood, straightening his suit jacket, but the gesture couldn't hide his exhaustion. He walked to his desk and noticed the soup and tea. "You brought me food." "You look like you hadn't eaten in a while," Maya said simply. "The soup should still be warm." For a long moment, Sterling stared at the simple meal. When he looked up at Maya, something had changed in his eyes. The walls he kept between himself and the world seemed to have thinned. "What's your name?" he asked. "Maya Chen." "Maya?" He said it like he was testing the sound. "How long have you been working here?" 8 months. "And I've never noticed you before." It wasn't a question, and Maya didn't answer. They both knew the truth. Men like Alexander Sterling existed in a different orbit from people like Maya Chen. "Thank you," Sterling said, his voice softer than Maya had ever heard it. "For the soup. For staying. For not calling an ambulance and turning this into a spectacle. Everyone needs someone to watch out for them." "Sometimes," Maya replied. Sterling picked up the soup, inhaling its warmth. When he looked at Maya again, she saw something she hadn't expected. Not gratitude, exactly, but recognition. As if he was seeing her as a person for the first time. "I should let you get back to work," he said, though he made no move toward the door. "Actually," Maya said, surprising herself with her boldness, "I'm finished with this floor. I was just making sure you were all right before I left." "What time is it?" "Almost 2:30. Sterling winced. "I have a board meeting at 8. "When's the last time you went home?" The question seemed to catch him off guard. He looked around his office again, at the makeshift bed he had created on the couch, at the accumulation of sleepless nights evident in every corner. "I don't remember," he admitted. Maya felt her heart squeeze. This man had everything money could buy, but he had forgotten the basic human need for rest, for home, for connection. "Mr. Sterling," she said carefully, "can I ask you something?" He nodded. "When you were sleeping, you looked peaceful. When's the last time you felt that way while you were awake?" The question hit its target. Sterling set down the soup and sank into his desk chair, suddenly looking older than his years. "I built this company from nothing," he said quietly. 12-hour days, 7 days a week for 8 years. Every decision, every risk, every success and failure resting on my shoulders." He gestured toward the windows overlooking the city. "Somewhere along the way, I forgot there was supposed to be a life outside these walls." "What would that life look like?" Maya asked. Sterling was quiet for a long time. "I honestly don't know anymore." Maya studied his face, seeing past the expensive suit and the corner office to the man underneath. He wasn't just tired. He was lost. "My shift ends in 20 minutes, she said. "There's a 24-hour diner 6 blocks from here. Nothing fancy, just good coffee and quiet booths. If you want to remember what it feels like to be somewhere that isn't about business for an hour, I'll be there." Sterling looked at her with surprise. "You're asking me to have coffee with you?" "I'm offering," Maya corrected. "No expectations. Just 2 people who happen to be awake at 3 in the morning, sharing a cup of coffee." She stood and gathered her cleaning supplies. At the door, she turned back. "The diner is called Eddie's. It's on Pine Street. I'll be there for about an hour before I head home." Maya left Sterling sitting in his office, staring at the soup she had brought him. As she finished her rounds on the lower floors, she wondered if she had crossed a line. Alexander Sterling was one of the most powerful men in the city. She cleaned his office for minimum wage. What had she been thinking? But as she packed up her cart and prepared to leave the building, Maya remembered the look in Sterling's eyes when he woke up on that couch. Not the sharp, calculating look of a CEO, but the confused, vulnerable look of someone who had forgotten how to be human. 20 minutes later, Maya sat in a corner booth at Eddie's diner, nursing a cup of coffee and wondering if she had made a fool of herself. The diner was nearly empty at this hour, just a few night shift workers and insomniacs seeking the comfort of fluorescent lights and bottomless coffee. She was about to leave when the door chimed, and Alexander Sterling walked in. He had loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves, making some effort to look less formal, but he still stood out in the working-class diner like a perfectly cut diamond in a bowl of pebbles. His eyes found Maya's booth, and for a moment he hesitated. Maya held her breath. This was the moment when reality would set in for both of them, when he would remember who he was and who she was and walk back out into the night. Instead, Sterling walked over and slid into the booth across from her. "I wasn't sure you'd actually be here," he said. "I wasn't sure you'd actually come," Maya replied. A waitress approached with coffee, and Sterling accepted it gratefully. For several minutes they sat in comfortable silence, 2 strangers finding unexpected common ground in the simple act of sharing space. "This is the first time I've been in a place like this in years," Sterling finally said, looking around at the worn vinyl booths and faded photographs on the walls. "What kind of places do you usually go to?" "Boardrooms. 5-star restaurants where I conduct business over dinner. Hotel bars where deals are made with handshakes." He sipped his coffee. "Places where every conversation has an agenda." "And this conversation?" Maya asked. "What's the agenda here?" Sterling met her eyes. "I honestly don't know. That's what makes it interesting." Maya smiled. "When's the last time you did something without an agenda?" "I can't remember." The honesty in his voice surprised them both. Maya saw Sterling processing this realization, as if he was discovering something about himself that had been hidden for years. "What about you?" Sterling asked. "What's your agenda?" "Business school, right? I saw the textbooks in your cleaning cart." Maya nodded. "Evening classes at Seattle University. I'm working toward my MBA." "That's ambitious. Why business?" "Because I want to understand how the world works," Maya said. "How companies are built, how decisions are made, how success is measured." She paused. I suppose I want to understand people like you. People like me. People who have the power to create opportunities, to change lives. People who make decisions that affect hundreds of employees, thousands of customers. Maya looked directly at him. I want to learn how to use that kind of influence responsibly. Sterling was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. What if I told you that most of us don't know what we're doing? That we're making it up as we go along, hoping our decisions don't destroy everything we've built? I'd say that makes you more human than most people think. Is that what you saw tonight? My humanity? Maya chose her words carefully. I saw someone who had forgotten to take care of himself while taking care of everyone else. Sterling's laugh was bitter. You give me too much credit. I'm not taking care of anyone. I'm building a company, maximizing shareholder value, increasing market share. It's all numbers and strategies and quarterly projections. And the 467 people who work for Sterling Dynamics? Maya asked. The families who depend on the paychecks you provide? The innovation your company brings to the world? You're telling me that's just numbers? Sterling stared at her. How do you know how many employees we have? I pay attention, Maya said simply. I see their offices, their personal photos, their late-night project work. I see the human side of your numbers. For the first time since Maya had met him, Alexander Sterling smiled. Not the polished smile of a businessman, but something genuine and surprised. You're not what I expected, he said. What did you expect? Someone who would see me as either a boss to impress or a rich guy to hit up for money. Maybe that's because you've forgotten that some people are just genuinely interested in other people, Maya said. They talked until sunrise, their conversation meandering through topics Maya never imagined discussing with someone like Alexander Sterling. He told her about the early days of Sterling Dynamics working out of a shared office space with two partners who had since moved on to other ventures. She told him about growing up in a family restaurant, learning business by watching her parents negotiate with suppliers and manage employees. My parents always said the restaurant business was really about hospitality, Maya explained as the diner began to fill with the breakfast crowd. The food was important, but what kept people coming back was how you made them feel. And how did you make them feel? Welcome, valued, like they mattered to someone. Sterling stirred sugar into his fourth cup of coffee. I think I've forgotten how to make people feel that way. It's not complicated, Maya said. You just have to remember that everyone has a story, everyone has struggles, and everyone wants to be seen as more than just their job title or their function in your organization. Like you saw me tonight. Like you let me see you tonight, Maya corrected. As the sun climbed higher over Seattle, both Maya and Sterling realized that their unlikely encounter was coming to an end. Sterling had a board meeting in 2 hours, and Maya needed to go home and prepare for her afternoon classes. Thank you, Sterling said as they prepared to leave the diner. For the soup, for the conversation, for treating me like a person instead of a position. Thank you for trusting me enough to show me who you really are, Maya replied. They stood outside the diner, morning traffic building around them, both uncertain how to end this unexpected connection. Maya, Sterling said finally, would it be completely inappropriate for me to ask if I could see you again? Maya felt her heart skip, but she kept her voice steady. That depends on what you mean by see me again. I mean, I'd like to continue our conversation. Not as CEO and cleaning staff, but as Alexander and Maya. Two people who found something worth talking about at 3 in the morning. Maya studied his face, looking for any sign that this was some kind of game or power play. Instead, she saw only sincerity and a hope that seemed to surprise him as much as it surprised her. Same time tomorrow night? She asked. Eddie's Diner? Sterling's smile was answer enough. Over the next few weeks, Maya and Alexander fell into an unexpected routine. Their 3 a.m. coffee meetings at Eddie's Diner became the highlight of both their days. What had started as a chance encounter between a cleaning woman and a CEO had evolved into something neither could have predicted, a genuine friendship built on mutual respect and honest conversation. Alexander began leaving his office earlier, not to go home, but to walk the floors of Sterling Dynamics and actually see his employees. He learned names, asked about projects, and discovered that the company he had built was filled with talented, dedicated people who had been waiting years for him to notice them. Maya watched this transformation with growing admiration. The man who had been unconscious on his office couch just weeks ago was becoming the leader his company had always needed. But she also saw the cost of his awakening. Alexander was questioning everything about his life, and the process was painful. "I fired my assistant today," he told her one night over coffee, his voice heavy with regret. "Not because she was bad at her job, but because I realized I'd been treating her like a machine for 3 years. She deserves better than working for someone who never acknowledged her as a person." Maya studied his face, seeing the genuine remorse there. "What did you tell her?" "The truth. That I'd been a terrible boss who took her dedication for granted. I gave her 6 months, severance, and a recommendation letter that should get her any executive assistant position in the city. That was the right thing to do." "It was the expensive thing to do," Alexander corrected. "I'm not sure it was right. Now I have to learn how to manage my own calendar and remember my own appointments." Maya smiled. "Maybe that's exactly what you need to learn." Their conversations revealed layers to both their personalities that surprised them. Alexander discovered that Maya had grown up translating for her immigrant parents at business meetings, giving her an intuitive understanding of corporate dynamics that most MBA students learned only from textbooks. Maya learned that Alexander had started Sterling Dynamics not for money, but because he believed technology could solve real problems for ordinary people. "The first app we developed was for my neighbor," Alexander explained one evening. "She was elderly, lived alone, and kept forgetting to take her medications. I created a simple reminder system that would call her phone and walk her through each pill she needed to take." "What happened to that app?" "It got bought out by a pharmaceutical company that turned it into a subscription service. Mrs. Patterson couldn't afford the monthly fee, so she went back to forgetting her medications." Alexander's jaw tightened. "That's when I learned that having good intentions doesn't matter if you don't maintain control over how those intentions get executed." Maya saw the pain in his eyes. "Is that why you became so controlling over every aspect of Sterling Dynamics?" "I told myself I was protecting the company's mission. But somewhere along the way, protecting the mission became more important than fulfilling it. These revelations led to changes at Sterling Dynamics that rippled through every department." Alexander began holding monthly town halls where employees could ask questions directly. He instituted a policy requiring all new products to include a version accessible to low-income users. Most importantly, he started spending time in the company's cafeteria, eating lunch with programmers and designers and customer service representatives. Maya watched these changes unfold during her evening cleaning shifts. She saw the subtle differences in how employees left their workspaces. Less stress eating evidenced by fewer empty snack packages. More personal items appearing on desks as people felt secure enough to make their offices feel like home. Group photos from company events that Alexander had started attending. But the most significant change was in Alexander himself. The man who had been running his company into the ground with his isolation was discovering that leadership meant connection, not control. "I had lunch with Sarah from accounting today," he told Maya one night. "Her daughter is starting college in the fall, and Sarah's been working overtime to save money for tuition. I realized we could solve that problem by offering tuition assistance as a company benefit." "That's a big expense," Maya pointed out. "It's an investment." "Sarah has been with the company for 6 years. She knows our financial systems better than anyone. If we help her daughter get an education, Sarah stays with us, and her daughter might even want to work for us someday." Alexander stirred his coffee thoughtfully. "Besides, what good is a successful company if the people who built it can't afford to send their kids to college?" Maya felt something shift in her chest as she watched Alexander discover his own capacity for generosity. This wasn't the calculated charity of a wealthy man looking for tax deductions. This was genuine care for people he was finally allowing himself to see as human beings. But Maya's own life was becoming more complicated. Word had spread among the cleaning staff that she was having regular conversations with the CEO. Some of her coworkers were envious, others were suspicious, and a few were openly hostile. "You think you're better than us now?" Maria, a woman who cleaned the lower floors, confronted Maya one evening. Having coffee with the boss man like you're his equal? It's not like that, Maya tried to explain. Then what is it like? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're trying to sleep your way into a corner office. The accusation stung because Maya had been asking herself the same question. What was happening between her and Alexander? Their conversations were becoming more personal, their connection deeper. But what future could a cleaning woman and a CEO possibly have together? Maya's doubts were compounded by an incident at school. Professor Williams, who taught her strategic management class, announced a guest lecture series featuring successful business leaders. Our first speaker will be Alexander Sterling, CEO of Sterling Dynamics, he said. Mr. Sterling has agreed to discuss the challenges of scaling a technology company in today's market. Maya felt her stomach drop. She would have to sit in a lecture hall and watch the man she had coffee with 3 times a week present himself as the polished, untouchable executive the world expected him to be. When the day arrived, Maya took a seat in the back of the auditorium, hoping to remain invisible. Alexander walked onto the stage looking every inch the successful CEO. His suit was perfectly tailored, his presentation slides were crisp and professional, and his speaking style was confident and engaging. But Maya saw what others missed. The way his eyes scanned the audience until they found her. The slight smile that crossed his face when their eyes met. The moment during the question and answer session when a student asked about work-life balance, and Alexander's prepared answers shifted into something more personal. For years, I believed that success required sacrifice, he said, his voice carrying a sincerity that surprised the audience. I sacrificed sleep, relationships, personal time, even basic self-care, thinking that was what leadership demanded. Recently, someone helped me understand that sustainable success requires the opposite. It requires taking care of yourself so you can take care of others. It requires building genuine relationships with the people around you. And it requires remembering that the numbers on a balance sheet represent real people with real lives and real dreams. After the lecture, Maya tried to slip out with the crowd, but Alexander's voice stopped her. Maya, could I speak with you for a moment? The remaining students turned to look at her with curiosity. Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks as she realized she was being singled out by the guest speaker. How do you two know each other? Professor Williams asked with interest. Maya froze, unsure how to answer. How did you explain to your business school professor that you had befriended the guest speaker while cleaning his office? Maya is one of my most insightful advisors, Alexander said smoothly. She has a unique perspective on organizational dynamics that has been invaluable to Sterling Dynamics. It wasn't technically a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either. Maya felt torn between gratitude for Alexander's protection of her reputation and discomfort with the implication that their relationship was professional. After the classroom emptied, they stood alone among the scattered chairs and abandoned coffee cups. You didn't have to do that, Maya said quietly. Do what? Make it sound like I work for you in some official capacity. Alexander looked confused. But you do advise me. Our conversations have changed how I run my company. Alexander, I clean your office. I'm a part-time student working toward an MBA I may never be able to afford to finish. You're the CEO of a major corporation. We don't exist in the same professional universe. Why does that matter? The question was so genuine, so innocent of the social realities that Maya felt a surge of frustration. Because people are already talking about us. My coworkers think I'm trying to use you to get ahead. Your employees probably think you're having some kind of midlife crisis, befriending the cleaning lady. And now my classmates are going to think I have some kind of inside connection that gives me an unfair advantage. Alexander was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was careful. Are you saying you want to stop meeting? The question hit Maya like a physical blow. The thought of losing their 3 a.m. conversations, of going back to being invisible to each other, was almost unbearable. But she was also afraid of where their friendship was heading. I'm saying I think we need to be realistic about what this is. And what is this? Maya struggled to find the words. 2 people from different worlds who found each other at the right moment. You were lost, and I happened to be there when you needed someone. But now you're finding your way again. You don't need me anymore. What if I want you anyway? The words hung between them, heavy with implication. Maya saw the vulnerability in Alexander's eyes, the fear of rejection that made him look like the unconscious man she had found on his office couch. "Alexander," she said gently, "want me for what? To be your friend? Your advisor? Something more? Because I need to know what we're talking about here." "I don't know," he admitted. "All I know is that you've changed everything about how I see the world. Before I met you, I was going through the motions of living without actually being alive. Now I wake up looking forward to our conversations. I make decisions by asking myself what you would think. I see my employees as people instead of resources because you showed me how to look past titles and positions." Maya felt tears threatening. "That's beautiful, but it's not sustainable. Eventually, you'll meet someone from your own world, someone who can be your equal in public as well as private. Someone who can attend charity galas and board meetings and country club events without people wondering what she's doing there." "I don't want someone from my world," Alexander said firmly. "My world is full of people who see relationships as transactions, who measure their worth by their net worth, who have forgotten how to be genuine human beings. I want someone real. I want someone who sees me as Alexander, not as Alexander Sterling, CEO." "But I am from a different world," Maya insisted. "And that difference matters, whether we want it to or not." Alexander stepped closer to her. "Then let's change the world." Before Maya could respond, her phone buzzed with a text from her supervisor. "Emergency at the office building. Water pipe burst on the 15th floor. Need all available staff immediately." "I have to go," Maya said, grateful for the interruption but also frustrated by the timing. "I'll drive you." "Alexander, you just gave a lecture to a room full of business students. You can't show up at an office building emergency to help the cleaning crew. People will talk." "Let them talk." But Maya was already gathering her things, needing distance to think. "I'll catch the bus. I'll see you later." She left Alexander standing in the empty classroom, both of them aware that their relationship had reached a turning point. Neither was sure how to navigate. The emergency at the Meridian Tower was worse than Maya had expected. A burst pipe on the 15th floor had flooded 3 floors below, soaking carpets, damaging equipment, and creating a mess that would take the entire night crew plus additional help to address. Maya threw herself into the work, grateful for the physical demands that kept her mind occupied. She spent hours moving damaged furniture, running industrial fans, and coordinating with maintenance crews to assess the water damage. It was nearly midnight when she finally took a break, slumping against a wall in the stairwell with exhaustion. Her phone buzzed with a text from Alexander. "I know you're dealing with the flood emergency. I ordered dinner for the entire cleaning crew. It should arrive soon. Take care of yourself." Maya stared at the message, torn between appreciation and frustration. Even when she was trying to create distance between them, Alexander was taking care of her and her coworkers. 20 minutes later, delivery drivers arrived with enough Chinese food to feed an army. The night supervisor, a gruff man named Pete who rarely showed emotion, actually smiled. "Well, I'll be damned," he said, looking at the feast spread out on tables in the lobby. "Nobody's ever bought dinner for the cleaning crew before." "Who sent this?" asked Maria, the woman who had confronted Maya earlier. Maya hesitated, then decided honesty was the best policy. "Alexander Sterling, the CEO." The reaction was immediate and varied. Some of her coworkers looked impressed, others suspicious, and Maria rolled her eyes. Of course he did. Probably trying to impress his girlfriend. "I'm not his girlfriend," Maya said quickly. "Then, what are you?" Pete asked, not unkindly but with genuine curiosity. Maya looked around at her coworkers. People who shared the invisible existence of service workers in a world that rarely noticed them. How could she explain that she had accidentally become friends with one of the most powerful men in the city? How could she justify the privileges that friendship brought when her coworkers struggled with the same challenges she faced? "I'm someone who happened to be in the right place at the right time to help someone who needed it," she said finally. "And now I'm not sure what comes next." Pete nodded slowly. "Life's funny that way. Sometimes you think you know where you're heading, And then everything changes with one conversation. As the crew settled in to eat, Maya found herself thinking about Pete's words. Her life had changed with one conversation, or rather, with one decision to stay and make sure an unconscious CEO was okay. But where did that change lead? What was she supposed to do with a connection that felt real but seemed impossible? Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a longer message from Alexander. I've been thinking about our conversation today. You're right that we come from different worlds. But I don't think that makes what we have less valuable. Some of the most important relationships in history have been between people who bridged different worlds. They didn't let those differences divide them. They used them to understand each other better and to make both their worlds better. I don't have all the answers, but I know I don't want to lose what we've found together. When you're ready to talk, I'll be waiting at Eddie's. Maya read the message twice, feeling her resolve wavering. Alexander was right that their differences could be a strength rather than a barrier. But he was also naive about the practical challenges those differences created. She looked around at her coworkers, sharing a meal that Alexander had provided, and saw a possible path forward. Maybe the answer wasn't to pretend their different worlds didn't matter, but to find ways to use his resources and her insights to make a positive impact on both their communities. Maya finished her dinner and returned to work, but her mind was already planning the conversation she would have with Alexander at 3 a.m. Because despite her fears and doubts, she couldn't imagine her life without their unlikely friendship. And maybe, just maybe, that friendship could become something that changed more than just their own lives. The cleanup at Meridian Tower stretched until 4 in the morning, but Maya's mind had been made up hours earlier. As she packed her cleaning supplies and said goodbye to her exhausted coworkers, she knew she needed to find Alexander. Their conversation couldn't wait another day. Eddie's diner was nearly empty when Maya arrived. Just the usual collection of night shift workers and insomniacs seeking refuge in fluorescent lights and bottomless coffee. Alexander sat in their usual booth, 2 cups of coffee growing cold on the table in front of him. He looked up as she approached, relief flooding his face. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said softly. "I wasn't sure either," Maya admitted, sliding into the booth across from him. "But I kept thinking about what you said, about bridging different worlds instead of letting them divide us." Alexander pushed one of the coffee cups toward her. "I've been doing a lot of thinking too, about what you said earlier, about the practical challenges we face. You're right that people will talk, that there will be assumptions and judgments, but I've realized something important." Maya wrapped her hands around the warm cup, waiting for him to continue. "I spent years caring too much about what people thought, making decisions based on how they would look rather than whether they were right. That's how I ended up passed out on my office couch, alone and exhausted and disconnected from everything that mattered." Alexander leaned forward. "I don't want to make that mistake again. I don't want to lose something real because I'm afraid of what people might say." But Alexander, it's not just about what people say. It's about practical realities. I make $12 an hour cleaning offices. You run a company worth hundreds of millions. Even if we ignore what people think, how do we build a relationship across that kind of gap? Alexander was quiet for a moment, stirring sugar into his coffee with deliberate slowness. When he looked up, his eyes held a determination Maya had never seen before. "What if we didn't have to?" "What do you mean? What if instead of trying to bridge the gap, we worked together to eliminate it?" Maya felt a flutter of excitement, mixed with apprehension. "I'm not sure I understand." Alexander pulled out his phone and showed Maya a document he had been working on. "I've been drafting a proposal for a new program at Sterling Dynamics. A partnership with local community colleges to provide full scholarships for working adults pursuing business degrees, combined with paid internships that give them real-world experience." Maya read through the outline, her heart racing as she began to understand what Alexander was suggesting. The program would be competitive, he continued, based on merit and potential, not connections or background. Participants would work part-time at Sterling Dynamics while completing their degrees, with the possibility of full-time positions upon graduation. This would cost the company millions, Maya said, though she could barely contain her excitement. It would be an investment in human capital that would pay dividends for decades, but more importantly, it would be the right thing to do. Alexander reached across the table and took her hand. "Maya, I want you to be the first participant in this program, not because of our relationship, but because you're exactly the kind of person this program should serve. Someone with intelligence, drive, and insights that come from understanding the world from multiple perspectives. Maya felt tears gathering in her eyes. Alexander, I can't accept special treatment because we're friends. You wouldn't be. The program will have an application process, interviews, academic requirements. You'd have to earn it just like everyone else. He squeezed her hand gently. But I know you'd earn it. And this way, we could work together as professional equals while you finish your education. The idea was breathtaking in its generosity and ambition. Maya could see how it would change not just her life, but the lives of dozens of other working adults who had been locked out of opportunities by circumstance rather than ability. What would people say about you creating a program that happens to benefit someone you're personally involved with? Maya asked. They'll say I'm trying to buy your affection or that I'm playing favorites. Alexander shrugged. Let them say it. The program will succeed or fail based on the results it produces, not on the gossip it generates. And if you excel in the program, which I know you will, it will prove that the selection was based on merit. Maya stared at the proposal, seeing her future laid out in carefully structured bullet points. A path from cleaning offices to working in boardrooms, from invisible to influential, from surviving to thriving. There's something else, Alexander said quietly. I've been thinking about what you said about not being able to attend charity galas and country club events. What if those aren't the events that matter? What if instead of trying to fit you into my old world, I create space for us in a new one? What do you mean? Sterling Dynamics sponsors dozens of community events every year. Charity fundraisers, educational seminars, community service projects. Events where the focus is on making a difference rather than making appearances. Events where your background would be an asset, not a liability. Maya began to see the vision Alexander was painting. A relationship built not on her adapting to his world or him condescending to hers, but on them creating something new together. You've really thought this through, she said. I've had a lot of sleepless nights since our conversation yesterday. Maya, I know this is complicated and risky and probably crazy, but I also know that you've made me a better person and a better leader. I don't want to go back to who I was before I met you. Maya felt the walls she had built around her heart beginning to crumble. This wasn't a powerful man offering to rescue her from her circumstances. This was a partner proposing a collaboration that would challenge both of them to grow. If I applied for this program, she said slowly, and if I was accepted, what would happen to us? To whatever this is between us? Alexander smiled, and Maya saw both hope and vulnerability in his expression. I think we'd figure it out as we go. As equals, as partners, as two people who believe that the best relationships are the ones that make both people stronger. Maya looked around Eddie's diner, at the worn vinyl booths where they had shared so many honest conversations, at the fluorescent lights that had illuminated the growth of their unlikely friendship. This place had become sacred to her, the birthplace of a connection that had changed everything about her life. Okay, she said quietly. Okay, I'll apply for the program, and okay, I'd like to see where this goes between us. Maya met his eyes. But Alexander, I need you to promise me something. Anything. Promise me that if this program happens, if I get accepted, if we try to build something together, you won't treat me differently than any other employee or participant. I want to succeed because I'm capable, not because I'm special to you. I promise, Alexander said solemnly. Though I should warn you, I'm going to expect more from you than from anyone else. Why? Because I know what you're capable of, and because I believe you can handle the challenge. They talked until sunrise about the details of the program, about Maya's goals and fears, about the practical steps needed to make their vision a reality. As the diner began to fill with the breakfast crowd, they both realized that their relationship had fundamentally changed. They were no longer just friends supporting each other through difficult times. They were partners planning a future together. 6 weeks later, Maya sat in a conference room at Sterling Dynamics, nervously adjusting her suit jacket as she waited for her final interview. The scholarship program had been announced publicly 3 weeks earlier, generating applications from over 200 working adults across the Seattle area. Maya had made it through 2 rounds of interviews and a comprehensive skills assessment to reach the final selection process. She had tried not to think about Alexander during the application process, focusing instead on demonstrating her qualifications and potential. Their 3 a.m. coffee meetings had continued, but they had made an unspoken agreement not to discuss the program beyond Alexander's updates on its development. The door opened, and 3 people entered. Maya recognized Dr. Sarah Martinez, the director of Sterling Dynamics, Human Resources Department, and Professor Williams from her community college. The third person was someone she had never seen before, an elegant woman in her 50s with silver hair and penetrating eyes. "Good morning, Maya," Dr. Martinez said with a professional smile. "I'd like you to meet Jennifer Walsh, our Director of Corporate Social Responsibility, and I believe you know Professor Williams." Maya shook hands with each interviewer, trying to project confidence despite her racing heart. "Maya," Jennifer Walsh began, "your application and interviews have been impressive. But I have to ask you directly about something that's come to our attention. We understand you have a personal relationship with Mr. Sterling. How do we know your acceptance into this program wouldn't be based on favoritism rather than merit?" Maya had been preparing for this question since she submitted her application. She looked each interviewer in the eye as she answered. "You don't know, and neither do I. What I can tell you is that I've spent 3 years working multiple jobs while maintaining a 3.8 GPA in my evening classes. I've managed my family's restaurant finances since I was 16. I've identified inefficiencies in office management systems during my cleaning shifts and developed solutions that could save companies thousands of dollars annually." Maya paused. "My relationship with Mr. Sterling began because I cared enough to make sure he was okay when I found him unconscious in his office. That same care and attention to detail is what I would bring to this program." Professor Williams leaned forward. "Maya, assuming you're accepted, how would you handle the pressure of being scrutinized as potentially receiving special treatment?" "By working twice as hard as everyone else," Maya said without hesitation. "By producing results that speak for themselves. By proving that Mr. Sterling's faith in this program, and in me, was justified." Jennifer Walsh made a note on her clipboard. "Tell us about your long-term goals. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?" Maya had thought about this question extensively. "I want to be in a position where I can create opportunities for other people, the way this program is creating an opportunity for me. Whether that's within Sterling Dynamics or elsewhere, I want to use whatever success I achieve to build bridges between different communities and different types of people." The interview continued for another 30 minutes, covering everything from Maya's technical skills to her vision for corporate social responsibility. When it ended, Maya felt cautiously optimistic, but she knew the decision was out of her hands. 3 days later, Maya was cleaning the executive floor when she found an envelope on her cart. Her hands trembled as she opened it, revealing a letter with the Sterling Dynamics letterhead. "Dear Maya," the letter began, "we are pleased to inform you that you have been selected as one of 12 participants in Sterling Dynamics' inaugural Community Partnership Scholarship Program." Maya had to read the sentence twice before its meaning sank in. She had been accepted, not because of her relationship with Alexander, but because she had earned it. The letter outlined her schedule: 20 hours per week working in various departments at Sterling Dynamics, full tuition coverage for her remaining MBA coursework, and a competitive salary that was 3 times what she made cleaning offices. Maya sank into a nearby chair, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what was happening. In a few short months, she would transition from invisible service worker to corporate professional. The dream she had barely allowed herself to imagine was becoming reality. Her phone buzzed with a text from Alexander. "Whatever the letter says, you earned it. I'm proud of you." Maya smiled through her tears. Alexander had kept his promise not to influence the selection process, but his support had given her the confidence to pursue the opportunity. That evening, Maya attended her last shift as a cleaning worker. Her supervisor, Pete, presented her with a card signed by the entire night crew, and even Maria offered grudging congratulations. "Just remember where you came from," Maria said, though her tone was warmer than usual. "I could never forget," Maya replied. "This place, these people, they made me who I am." As Maya packed up her cleaning cart for the final time, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. 6 months ago, she had been invisible, working multiple jobs just to survive. Now she was about to embark on a career that could transform not just her own life, but the lives of countless others. The next Monday morning, Maya walked into Sterling Dynamics wearing a professional suit instead of a cleaning uniform. She rode the elevator to the executive floor not to clean offices, but to begin her new role as a program coordinator and MBA candidate. Alexander was waiting in the lobby, along with Dr. Martinez and the other program participants. Maya caught his eye and saw pride and excitement reflected there, but also something deeper. They were no longer just friends who had found each other in an empty office late at night. They were partners embarking on a journey that would challenge them both to become the best versions of themselves. "Welcome to Sterling Dynamics," Alexander said to the group of new participants, his voice carrying the authority of leadership, but also the warmth of someone who genuinely cared about their success. "You're here because you've demonstrated the talent, drive, and potential to make a significant impact on our company and our community. Over the next 2 years, you'll be challenged, supported, and given opportunities to grow in ways you might never have imagined." Maya looked around at her fellow participants, a single mother who had been working as a cashier while studying accounting, a former construction worker pursuing an engineering degree, a restaurant server with dreams of marketing management. Each had their own story of struggle and determination, their own dreams of building a better future. "This program exists because we believe talent and potential are distributed equally, but opportunities are not," Alexander continued. "Your job is to prove that given the right chance, anyone can excel. Our job is to make sure you have everything you need to succeed." As the orientation continued, Maya felt a profound sense of gratitude mixed with determination. She had been given an extraordinary opportunity, but she knew the real work was just beginning. She would have to prove herself every day, not just to critics who might question her presence, but to herself. But for the first time in her life, Maya felt truly confident about her future. She had Alexander's support, but more importantly, she had discovered her own strength. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she was ready to meet them head-on. The cleaning woman who had found an unconscious CEO 6 months earlier was gone. In her place stood a professional, a scholar, and a partner in building something meaningful. The transformation was complete, but the real adventure was just beginning. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us about their mom's beautiful heart, about how we're going to build a life together based on truth instead of pretense. Elena's eyes filled with tears. "They're so lucky to have you as a father." "We're all lucky to have found each other," Alexander replied, kissing her forehead. When Elena went into labor on a rainy Thursday evening, Alexander felt the familiar sensation of his carefully ordered world shifting into something entirely new. But this time, instead of panic, he felt a deep sense of readiness. The labor was long and difficult. Elena was strong throughout, but Alexander could see the toll it was taking. He held her hand through contractions, brought her ice chips, and whispered encouragement when she was too tired to believe she could continue. "I can't do this," she gasped during a particularly intense contraction. "Yes, you can," Alexander said firmly. "You're the strongest person I know. You rebuilt my entire life just by being yourself. You can absolutely do this." "We can do this," Elena corrected, squeezing his hand. "We can do this," he agreed. At 3:47 a.m., Isabella Marie Kane entered the world with a cry that seemed to announce her intention to make her presence known. When the doctor placed her in Elena's arms, Alexander felt his heart expand in ways he hadn't known were possible. "She's perfect," Elena whispered, tears streaming down her face. Alexander looked at his daughter, red-faced and wrinkled and absolutely beautiful, and felt something fundamental click into place. This tiny person would depend on him and Elena to show her what love looked like, what integrity meant, how to navigate a world that would try to convince her to be someone she wasn't. "Hello, Isabella," he said softly, touching her tiny hand with one finger. "I'm your dad. I've been waiting to meet you." The baby's cries quieted, and for a moment her dark eyes seemed to focus on his face. Alexander felt a responsibility, unlike anything he'd ever experienced in business or relationships. This wasn't about profit or success or image. This was about being worthy of the trust this small person was placing in him. "I promise you," he whispered, "I will always tell you the truth. I will always show up. I will love you for exactly who you are." Bringing Isabella home was like adding the final piece to a puzzle Alexander hadn't realized was incomplete. The house that had been transformed by Elena's presence now became a true family home. The nursery they'd prepared together filled with the sounds and smells of new life. Alexander approached fatherhood the same way he'd approached rebuilding his business after his transformation. With intention, presence, and a commitment to authenticity. He changed diapers at 3 a.m., learned to operate on 3 hours of sleep, and discovered that baby giggles were more rewarding than any standing ovation he'd ever received. "You're a natural," Elena observed one evening, watching Alexander give Isabella her bath in the small tub they'd set up in their bedroom. "I feel like I'm making it up as I go along," he admitted, carefully supporting Isabella's head while she splashed contentedly in the warm water. "We all are. That's what parenting is." Alexander looked at his daughter, who was staring up at him with the serious expression she wore when she was trying to figure something out. "What do you think, Isabella? Am I doing okay?" The baby responded by grabbing his finger and bringing it to her mouth, which Alexander chose to interpret as approval. As Isabella grew from a newborn into a curious, active baby, Alexander found that fatherhood was teaching him lessons no business school had covered. Patience when she refused to sleep through the night. Flexibility when she decided that the carefully planned feeding schedule meant nothing to her. Unconditional love when she was cranky and difficult and absolutely perfect all at the same time. But perhaps most importantly, fatherhood was teaching him about presence. In business meetings, his mind had often wandered to other deals, other opportunities. With Isabella, he discovered a kind of focused attention he'd never experienced before. When she was learning to sit up, nothing else in the world mattered but being there to catch her if she wobbled. When she said her first word, "Dada," Alexander felt more pride than he had at any business achievement. "I never understood before," he told Elena one evening as they watched Isabella play with wooden blocks on the living room floor. "Why? People said, having children changes everything. I thought it just added responsibility. I didn't realize it would fundamentally alter how I see the world." "How so?" Alexander watched his daughter stack blocks with intense concentration, her little tongue poking out slightly as she focused. "Everything I do now, I think about how it will affect her. Not just financially, but the kind of world I'm helping create for her to grow up in. The example I'm setting, the values I'm demonstrating through my choices." Elena smiled. "You mean you can't just think about quarterly profits anymore?" "I think about what kind of company I want her to be proud of when she's old enough to understand what I do. I think about the employees whose children will grow up alongside her. I think about building something that makes the world better, not just more profitable." It was a transformation that extended beyond personal philosophy into practical business decisions. Alexander began prioritizing environmental sustainability, not because it was trendy, but because he wanted Isabella to inherit a healthy planet. He implemented more generous family leave policies, because he understood now how precious those early months with a child were. He invested in education initiatives, because he wanted all children to have opportunities to discover their authentic selves. The changes didn't go unnoticed by the business community. Kane's company has become the gold standard for ethical business practices, read an article in Forbes. Since becoming a father, CEO Alexander Kane has proven that doing good and doing well aren't mutually exclusive. But the recognition that mattered most to Alexander came from Isabella herself. When she was 8 months old, she started reaching for him the moment he walked through the door each evening. When she was 10 months old, she crawled across the room to where he sat working on his laptop, pulled herself up using his leg, and babbled what sounded remarkably like, "Work done?" "She's right," Alexander said to Elena, closing the laptop immediately. "Work is done. Family time now." It became their new rule. When Alexander came home, work stopped. No emails, no calls, no exceptions. The evening hours belonged to Elena and Isabella, and the life they'd built together. One evening, when Isabella was almost a year old, Alexander found Elena in the nursery, rocking their daughter to sleep and singing softly in Spanish. The scene was so perfect, so complete, that Alexander felt his throat tighten with emotion. This was what he'd been searching for his entire adult life without knowing it. Not success as the world measured it, but success as his heart defined it. A home filled with love, work that mattered, relationships built on truth rather than convenience. "Thank you," he whispered to Elena when she emerged from the nursery, For what? For seeing who I could become before I saw it myself. For staying that first night when I came home broken. For believing that running away from my wedding was the beginning of something better, not the end of everything good. Elena took his hands in hers, the same gesture she'd made that first evening when he'd confessed to running away from his own altar. "Thank you for having the courage to disappoint people who never really saw you anyway," she replied, using her grandmother's words that had become their private motto. "And for showing Isabella what it looks like when someone chooses to be real instead of perfect." As they stood together in the hallway outside their daughter's room, Alexander reflected on the journey that had brought them here. 3 years ago, he'd been a man so focused on external validation that he'd almost married someone who didn't really know him. Tonight, he was a husband and father whose greatest achievement wasn't a business deal or a stock price, but the quiet trust of a baby who reached for him when she needed comfort. The transformation hadn't been easy or quick. There had been setbacks, moments of doubt, times when the old patterns of thinking had tried to reassert themselves. But with Elena's steady presence and now Isabella's innocent faith in him, Alexander had learned that authenticity wasn't a destination, but a daily choice. A choice to show up as himself, flaws and all. A choice to prioritize relationships over recognition. A choice to build a life that felt true from the inside out. Standing in the hallway of the home they'd created together, listening to their daughter's peaceful breathing through the baby monitor, Alexander knew with absolute certainty that running away from his wedding had been the best decision he'd ever made. Because sometimes you have to lose everything you thought you wanted to discover what you actually needed. And sometimes the person who helps you put the pieces back together turns out to be the love of your life, disguised as someone you'd barely noticed before your world fell apart. In the kitchen where they'd first shared honest conversation, Alexander poured 2 glasses of wine, while Elena prepared a late dinner. Isabella was sleeping peacefully upstairs, and the house felt full of quiet contentment. "What are you thinking about?" Elena asked, noticing his reflective mood. "Just how different everything is now. 3 years ago, if someone had told me I'd be this happy, I wouldn't have believed them. And now?" Alexander pulled Elena close, dancing slowly to music only they could hear. "Now I know that happiness isn't something you achieve or acquire. It's something you choose, every single day, by being brave enough to be exactly who you are." Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.